Are you a B2B company that uses podcasts to grow your company's revenue? Well, if so, you are invited to the B2B Pod Con. It is the premier podcast conference in the B2B space. It will take place November 11th through 13th in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. Just a short walk from some of the best music and food you'll find anywhere. Learn from some of the best in the industry and connect with hundreds of your peers. Tickets are on sale with early bird pricing going through August 9th. After August 9th, the price is going to go up, so don't miss out on the best prices you will see before the event. Go to b2bpodcon.com, get your tickets. Information's in the show notes, b2bpodcon.com.
It might be as, banal as a product video. It might be a talk somebody gave at the company. So it could be internal, it could be external. And that's really what you need to be looking at to produce a lot of interesting outputs out of that, because everyone's talking about do more with less right now, but they're not really, making the investments to actually make that happen. And so when you look at the podcasting part, this is a really valuable piece of clay that companies have. And I talk to companies and individuals who are saying, yeah, I'm just kind of putting it out there and doing an episode release post. And then I'm just kind of saying, see you later. And I'm like, you have an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is of gold to go make, really interesting impacts. And, if you are a creator who's looking to get an audience, how are you kind of throwing stuff at a wall across platforms to make sure that people are able to ingest it? How are you increasing your SEO and discoverability? And you need a lot of interesting text to go do that and automations to go help you with that, or else you'll go crazy. And then if you're a company, how do you turn this into demand generating assets? Ones that are gated, ungated, whatever it is, that are establishing you as the thought leader in the space that that the market's looking to. And so I just saw that happening across the industry, and diminishing returns on outbound, especially for companies right now. That's a huge trend.
Welcome to It's Marketing's Fault, the podcast where we discuss how to do marketing the right way. I'm your host, Eric Rutherford. Before we jump into today's episode, let me encourage you to leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you would drop a review, not only will that give me feedback, but that will also help boost the visibility of the podcast so other people can find this podcast and benefit from it as much as you are. So wherever you listen to podcasts, would love for you to drop a review. All right. Let's jump into today's episode. And I am thrilled today because I have with me Michael Katz. He is the founder and CEO of Flowsend, which transforms your audio and video into high-impact content and helps you reach and grows your audience effortlessly. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eric. It's really great to be here.
It's my pleasure. I was so excited. We connected. For everybody listening, we connected with Michael at a conference in May, CEO Content Entrepreneurs Expo, and it was just struck with conversation, got to know his product, and we've just been emailing back and forth. I got to test it out. So man, I was just thrilled you wanted to jump on the podcast and have more conversation.
Yeah, of course. And it's great to have you using the product, and that's one of the reasons it's really exciting to have a product that's B2B, but also kind of prosumer is, you might be able to meet someone just in the wild who can use your thing. And that's kind of fun to just watch that happen in real time. So it's been great to have you.
Yeah, it is. And so just kind of opening question, one of the fascinating things, I was looking through your bio, going through information, and I saw that you worked for a company called Octagon. You were in China when you worked for them. I think it's fascinating when you have international experience, that brings so much to the table as far as people I've talked to. What is something that you learned in that experience that shapes how you're building your business today? Yeah,
I think there's a lot of indirect learnings you have from that kind of exposure, right? It's not like I'm looking, at one thing and directly porting it over to another, but, I don't know, my dad is from Chile. He was pretty insistent when I was a kid, being like, you're going to understand that this isn't the only place in the world and people think differently than you. And, you got to watch movies with subtitles when you're 5 years old all the time and all that good stuff. And so that was pretty much inculcated into my brain at that point. And then, one of the languages I decided to study in college was Chinese. And thought, Asia's pretty interesting and there's good, cool stuff happening over there. I think it's the tenor has changed a bit, but I really wanted to learn it. And it was a totally different language than anything I'd ever learned. And so I spent a summer in an immersion program there where you get kicked out with no refund if you spoke English. And then, the next summer I decided, well, I would love to work there. And yeah, sure, it'll be some kind of like maybe BS internship, but it's really important to learn about how people think and how people work and what are their norms. And I think, what was most enlightening was to work with these people with different perspectives and styles. And what that job and learning these languages and spending a ton of time in these countries really taught me was how to see a problem through other people's eyes instead of your own. And I know that sounds like trite and you talk about empathy, but it's really questioning how every judgment you make, even if it's something that you think is objective to you, might actually be very different and not so objective in someone else's eyes. And if you were to really take that down to like a product perspective, is anyone who's ever built a product and sees someone else using it knows the frustrating experience when you're watching someone poke around and completely basically miss all the great things about what you actually do. Say, well, how can you not understand that? It's so obvious. And the reality is not obvious. And so, I'd say like those are some of the really key lessons, is constantly questioning to what extent you're just seeing things through your own eyes and style. And that is kind of the stuff that we kind of carry around into it. And it's part of why we built something that can emulate your brand voice and how you think and what the outputs you want are. So, yeah.
I think that's fascinating because everything, the way you describe that, like I am going through my own experience, not only of building services, but working as a marketer at enterprise level companies who work sort of hand in hand with the product team and trying to help them sort of like, sometimes they get it. And sometimes like even especially me, I get so siloed in my own bubble and I think, well, they should get it, but they don't. And so I like bringing that experience forward, like so impactful.
Yeah. Not to nerd out too hard, but like, I wrote a bunch of independent work at some point during college about innovation discourse in China. And I think whatever early 2010s, late 2000s, it was like China never innovates. Okay. Well, then what you need to get down to nerd out about is, what does the word innovation mean? And what does it mean to us? What are we looking, how are we looking at that word? What does it even really mean? And what does it mean to us? What would it mean to them? And how is we influencing how each other sees that? And so it's things really as small as that, which is like, well, what does this thing mean that I'm giving to somebody right now, or that we're talking about? Are we talking about the same thing here? Can we kind of clarify the definitions? And yeah, you're talking about working with clients. How do we know what success looks like to them? How do we define that together and understand perspectives and ask questions to kind of get there?
It is. It's that communal learning, right? It doesn't matter what we care about. Like it's really what they care about, and really understanding them. And so like that kind of rolls into Flowsend. Like you go from, a bunch of years ago, you're working in China, you have been through a lot of experiences, worked at different companies, built different things. What prompted the creation, the founding of Flowsend?
Yeah, there's nothing like scratching your own itch. And that's the one beauty and pain of being someone who likes to build things. And my background is in B2B software. And before this, I had founded a company called Coin, where we built a software for sales teams. And, what we were building was really impactful to us. It was definitely something very new for people. And so we realized we needed to create like a marketing and content engine to evangelize what we were doing and spread the message and the methodology. And it needed to be this marketing engine, a content engine. So I decided to create a podcast called The Windwire, and we brought on industry executives who were my target customers. It's thematic with what we were doing, and I was so nervous to start it. But I'd been set up with this investor who has this big podcast and network, and he said, just do it. Who cares? So I started it and said, I'm just going to be cheap and edit it myself and do everything all on my own and find my voice. And I found that process was incredibly time consuming. And even being someone who's an AI power user in many ways, I realized it just took a ton of time. And I was just publishing episodes and saying, whatever, screw it, on to the next one. I got a lot of other stuff to do. So by the time, I finished that production, I wasn't really creating that content engine that I wanted from the start. Like the whole reason I did it in the first place. I'm like, yeah, it's still really valuable, but it's failing in that aspect. Tried a bunch of podcasting AI tools. They didn't really meet my needs in terms of quality or matching my brand voice, how I like to write things or title things, or, customizing my workflow. I need these outputs really in good quality that I can go kind of almost get publish ready. So it led me to wonder if others face the same challenges. We were selling off our sales startup. I talked to other companies, individuals, and saw this was a really common problem. And we had the ability to help people grow and reach more audiences if we could develop a solution like this and potentially even, grow their client base. So that's when we built Flowsend, and we, basically built it for me and took it into beta and then released it. And it's been just kind of a whirlwind since.
I think that's important though, because I think some of the best products really do come from solving our own problems, where we run into the issues where it's like this should just be easier. And yeah, if for everybody listening, if you are not familiar with podcast production, it is time consuming, especially when you get into the text and dealing with show notes and dealing with everything. The magic of the transcript is still a big, nasty text file. At the end of that's kind of where the transcript starts, is a big, nasty text file or the audio file. And to do anything with that on your own is, it's laborious. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, there's, and we've, gone well beyond podcasts now for a lot of folks, but, what a podcast is, and this is something that everybody has, individuals, companies, is what I'd call like original content. And you have a lot of original content sitting there. It might be as, banal as a product video. It might be a talk somebody gave at the company. So it could be internal, it could be external. And that's really what you need to be looking at to produce a lot of interesting outputs out of that, because everyone's talking about do more with less right now, but they're not really, making the investments to actually make that happen. And so when you look at the podcasting part, this is a really valuable piece of clay that companies have. And I talk to companies and individuals who are saying, yeah, I'm just kind of putting it out there and doing an episode release post. And then I'm just kind of saying, see you later. And I'm like, you have an hour or 30 minutes or whatever it is of gold to go make, really interesting impacts. And, if you are a creator who's looking to get an audience, how are you kind of throwing stuff at a wall across platforms to make sure that people are able to ingest it? How are you increasing your SEO and discoverability? And you need a lot of interesting text to go do that and automations to go help you with that, or else you'll go crazy. And then if you're a company, how do you turn this into demand generating assets? Ones that are gated, ungated, whatever it is, that are establishing you as the thought leader in the space that that the market's looking to. And so I just saw that like happening across the industry, and diminishing returns on outbound, especially for companies right now. That's a huge trend. Marketing is saying, how do we go support that? And yeah, content is king a little bit right now. And people are wondering, how do we do this in a way that's cost effective? And I think we want to kind of help people bring that cost down and increase revenue.
It is. And I'm glad you mentioned more than podcasts, because that's one of the, I think as marketers, sometimes it's easy for me. I can speak for me. I don't want to generalize for everybody else, but like I get stuck in my lane sometimes, and I forget that, as you said, like content is content. There is written content, there is audio content, there is video content, and yet the tools, for example, what you're creating with Flowsend, it helps you go from audio and video to text. Like it's not podcast centric. Like I'm working with a client to create some content videos for them. And so they'll have the video, and now they also have, we can take that transcript, we can take that conversational information and just give them like a wealth of written content, blogs, posts, like all kinds of stuff. So if you have a content catalog, it opens up, man, it's like suddenly the library vault has been opened in terms of what you can do.
It's really interesting right now what you're seeing go on, which is everyone is kind of realizing they're becoming these like little media engines that they need to go pump stuff out. And I'll give you a really funny example of someone who uses the platform who, they produce a bunch of video content and they have events, and then they also have podcasts. They have multiple, and they are like an agency for manufacturing firms. And, couldn't be more kind of boring, right? Of just like, okay, do these people even consume this kind of content? And they said, they have these assets, and they had someone approach them recently who said, look, I've been consuming your content on LinkedIn and your podcast for the last 2.5 years, and we're finally ready to procure your services. They had no idea who this person was. This is 2.5 years relationship, basically parasocial. They had no idea, right? Not on their lead funnel, nothing. That feels like an extreme example, and it seems like insurmountable to be able to invest in that kind of like level of engagement and content for someone like that. But it's just a really kind of extreme and instructive lesson of, yeah, people are out there right now who are potential listeners, buyers, someone engaging with you, and whether you're just trying to grow them, or you're a company who's trying to basically educate them on the market and be the authority. You never know. That has so much reach, and the problem is you're only reaching 0.0001% of people who might be interested in what you do every time. So how do you keep that message going, continue that content, give people a lot of different ways to consume it? People are pressed for time. They need different modes of consumption. They're not going to listen to your full hour-long thing every time. They might just want the takeaways today. So, but it's still equally impactful.
It is. And, something that I've seen is people tend to sort of get into their own preferred content medium for, I don't know, I'm making up terms as we go, but like this idea of, okay, I listen to things, or I've got an hour and a half commute each way. So like, I don't have time to read, but like, I will listen to everything I can find. Or like, I get like 2-minute spurts. So I want something short that I can scroll through and give me the highlights. Or I like sit down once a week or an hour a day, and I like to just read. Give me some long stuff. Like or video people, like that's fascinating. The more I talk to people, is some people are like, I will never listen to an audio podcast. I don't read, but I'll sit down and watch a video for an hour of two people talking, this conversation. And so you're right. It's trying to expand your content to reach the audience where they're at. And the bigger and more options you give them, the greater chance you're really gonna grow it more effectively.
It's so hard to convert people, even those who focus on reaching people through audio, video. Let's say you're dealing with someone who commutes, they need to find you in the first place somehow in a discoverable medium. So that might be when they're at work or something, and they see a snippet of something you did, and it piques their curiosity. And now that's something they go tune into when they get in the car. Right. And so you need to increase your odds, basically.
Yeah, I've seen, whether it's through email, whether it's through just scrolling through LinkedIn, whether it's something like that, several times I have seen something. I'm like, ooh, I want to go check that out. I can't do it right now. Would have never known about it had I not seen that post or that little blurb in an email or something. Yeah, it's all about discoverability.
It's the problem of the day. It's the problem with it.
Is. So as you're creating Flowsend, you've got a great service. So what, and you and I were talking right before we hit record, this idea of how do you position it, what makes it unique, and I know you're sort of going through that process. As you look at Flowsend, what really sort of makes it unique in the marketplace for your customers?
Sure. Well, I mean, at the highest level, there's a lot of if you're just going to go to AI solutions in general, right? AI content, where we want to focus in the first place is we're going to take your original content, right? However you define that, and use that first and foremost. What AI is, still kind of working through, in my opinion, is producing something that feels novel and interesting at all from nothing is still a huge problem. Like, I'm not going to go ask it to just write a blog on sales and say, make this interesting. It's going to kind of sound not like me and just be kind of generic, where the real value is in your existing content, right? Existing, whether it's interviews, people, you've done before, people in your company, speeches you've given, podcasts, conversational content, recordings from events that your company has hosted, really anything in that sphere. So that's why we're really focused on kind of audio video right now, is basically saying, can we take your original content and turn it into these other content formats, and also even help you automate content creation from that video and audio in other formats too. So that's first and foremost. Within that space, other people, there's podcasting, AI, all those is, there were a few, there are some generic ones, right? Are just saying for anyone who needs something, right? We're just going to give you a few examples. That's probably going to serve a lot of the market really well. We're not really going to compete with that. We're happy to accommodate those people. But we are fundamentally for people who are serious about content and growth. And we're embedding ways to actually make that happen within the product at a reasonable price point. And so, first one of those is quality. When you see it, hard to measure. We are laser focused on that. We are funneling these transcripts to different AIs, depending upon where we've seen outputs be better for each specific output, right? So how are we constantly testing that and making sure that's better? Secondly, brand voice. We don't want, you don't want to publish content that sounds robotic, AI, not like you, whether you're an individual or a brand. Candidly, I was an individual doing it, but brands, that's even more and more important. How can it emulate what you've already done in the past before, or what you like that other people have done? And so how can we help it emulate that and learn from you and your voice over time? And then, the other one that we are really focused on is customization. Everyone is trying to target different channels, target different kinds of outputs. It's been really incredible to see people, once they take back their time a little bit, that's the very base kind of like value layer, what they can imagine doing as part of their workflow and as part of their template. It's really incredible. And so we've seen people add a whole host of different outputs. And once you put it in one time, it's kind of like set it and forget it. You get that every single time in a predictable and reliable way. And so they're able to just really multiply their output and their chance of success out there, grow audiences and their client base. And so those are kind of the areas. And so what we're really continually focused on is how do we embed our expertise on growth, on AI, to take that away from the user. And then even specifically around areas like SEO, how do we embed that in what you do so you can be more discoverable, whether you're a company or an individual. So yeah, look, I mentioned, before this conversation that we want to service an individual, the person like me, but we've built in these features that allow companies at scale to start doing these workflows, putting these guardrails around it and saying, here's what we want from every single podcast. Here's what we want from our webinars. And these are different outputs. These are different brand voices sometimes, or we publish a lot of different podcasts as an example for an agency. Great. We can accommodate all those different assets. So it's, trying to accommodate across that spectrum there and making it really customizable for the user and a turnkey experience.
And I think that's really where this tool becomes like exponentially powerful, is the ability, especially B2B, not exclusively B2B, but like the sweet spot with B2B, and being able to take large amount of content, large amount of different brands for agencies. I'm even like different companies I've worked for in the past. I'm thinking, man, they did webinars like every week, for years, and like all of that to be able to make it repeatable and save time. Just really be able to save time, as you said, so that they can do some other cool stuff and really help the brand and keep that voice. Because as an individual, it's challenging to keep sort of the individual voice, the brand voice. The moment you start adding more people into the business mix, the voice it becomes very vanilla very quickly.
It does. And no one needs that. In the sea of content, You don't need that anymore.
That's the hard part, is because you don't want your voice to be just like everybody else's, because then you've just become a commodity. You've easily become a commodity that way. Well, not even a commodity. It's like you become, which one do I pick? I'll pick this one. Like, you just become a random choice almost.
It's a huge risk. And I think there's a little bit of a power to the people thing happening too right now, which is fantastic, right? Like, how do we humanize brands? That is on one hand from like the marketing side, as we've talked about, of adding our brand voice in, humanizing that. There's also around how do we empower our people to be sharing their own thought leadership. I'll give you a good example. We have some folks, I come from this sales and customer background. We have people putting in customer calls in some cases and basically saying, I want to create interesting posts from what we've discussed on this in sort of an anonymized way. And why is that important? We're out there in the field every single day, learning things from customers, having really interesting conversations. A lot of us are doing that as part of any given business. How do we turn those calls that we're having into really interesting posts for other people to consume? Hey, if we talked about this was a really interesting insight they shared. I think a lot of other people across the industry are having that too. So, you can be an individual doing that, someone who's just having conversations regularly. You can be a seller who's, trying to reduce that outbound onus, saying, look, I want to establish a brand around what we're doing here too, and show that I know what I'm talking about when I talk to customers here. And let me post a little bit about showing kind of like how I feel about things. And so it's just very interesting seeing that diversity of use cases. And it all comes down to like what we'd call these like this conversational content, or even individuals talking. That's where real interesting insights and content comes from.
That's brilliant. I never thought about feeding like the sales conversations through that. It makes so much sense. Like, I don't know why I didn't see it, but just hearing you describe that, it's like, wow, you can really get a feel. What are they saying? What's the process feel like getting the key pieces from that conversation in a nice, easy way that you can create content, answer questions, go handle those objections. I think that's brilliant. And as you build that library up, you really, oh my word, like it suddenly becomes this huge database.
Yeah, you start to see the commonalities, and you can start, whether it's internal or external, you're posting interesting things. Shoot, I mean, for me, I'm kind of like, let me put this through an AI and tell me the key takeaways and give me a draft of a thank you email and a follow-up. And right, there's so much customizability within that. But then there's also, well, actually, we talked about something really interesting that I hadn't thought about before. And I want to share that kind of a moment that I had with my audience or my, friends and colleagues and followers. And can I share that with other people? How do I generate that? And so what really we do is we allow for unlimited outputs, and you can kind of set that workflow up. And once you set it one time, it's anytime you just put a net new file in there, it's going to give you everything you need in a minute. Right. And so that's that's absolutely essential for what we do.
It is. It really changes the game. It gives you the opportunity to tweak it. And then once you get it, I like that set it and forget it, because there are so many things that you just have to do from a content perspective, from a marketing perspective. A set it and forget it thing is a pretty amazing. I mean, that's a gift. It really is.
And I know, and we know at this point, right, like the market's still being inspired. And so we tried to, as much as possible, we want to let people use it on their own and go have fun and give it a whirl at this point. But it's even more helpful when someone basically says, look, we want onboarding, and we're happy to provide that right now. Just like, it's a 15-minute call saying, what do you want to get out of this? And we know what we're doing. So let's just help you get something set up that's really compelling for you. And then we'll let you go run free. And so we want to help people with that, because it helps us too. It helps us get feedback on how do we templatize things that are really the best of what people are doing out there for everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, when you can provide that white glove customizable service where you are so customer focused, it benefits the customer obviously, but then you get tremendous value from that as well, and tremendous information. What's something you've learned in the beta process with this that you didn't expect?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I'm constantly learning, right? I mean, we're doing the B2B side. We're doing kind of a more prosumer side right now. But prosumer is totally fresh for me. It's crazy, right? Learning about what are the ways to grow your footprint in a organic way that people can just put something in and start using it. And so that is like total learnings around optimizing UX and helping discoverability of the things that you think are important to really get people getting your value quickly. And, how do you engage with communities, and how do you, get organic reach? Those are, it's a new lesson every day, I would say, around that. And it's a matter of prioritization and learning around that, and, pricing to a general market. And then, it's all about, as you already talked about, learning from customers. I'd rather have people complaining all day to me than not engaging at all. So I love when people give feedback. It's the best, even if it's bad, or it's like, this isn't working. I'm like, that's amazing, because that means you care. Just seeing use cases, like an old, I don't know, I'd call them, we used to kind of partner as part of different firms, and I was an ecosystems person, and I gave him access to the platform. He's a really fantastic marketer, and I know he's really scrappy. And I said, yeah, he's probably going to use this in interesting ways. He doesn't have a podcast, but I'm sure they have some webinars or videos or other kinds of stuff that he might want to use this on. And last week, he sent me a message. He sent me an email, and it was a screenshot of a Slack message, someone in his company, a small startup, business texting. And basically, he had put product videos from their YouTube into our platform and generated these custom descriptions for them, rich descriptions. And basically someone in the company messaged him, hey, our YouTube videos are really pumping right now. what gives? And it had genuinely just been him putting those videos into our platform, generating this kind of consistent custom output, just like a much richer description with more keywords in it. And that had really extended the growth for these like seemingly boring, videos or just kind of like little marketing clips and product clips. I was amazed. I'm like, that wasn't an intended use case that we thought about actively. And that's why I gave the product to him, because I'm like, he's probably going to come up with some interesting stuff. But hey, shoot, like, shouldn't everybody be doing that? Right? Shouldn't everybody be trying to optimize their content? They're spending so much time putting it out there, teams, within companies and contractors. So how do we go help other people do that and expose that to them in interesting ways? It's just like a constant learning process.
I love how you describe that, because the amount of time it takes to create the original content in the beginning, anyway, like you talk about product videos or anything like that, it's a lot, right? There is time and expense and going into that. And by being able to feed it through Flowsend and do some tweaking and really get the output right, like the time it took for the output on changing descriptions and keywords and doing some of that stuff is significantly smaller than on the initial creation side of like the video.
It's like, there's a refrain, I think, in startup world that a lot of people have heard of, first time entrepreneurs are super focused on product and not on distribution. And second time entrepreneurs realize that distribution and, that's the real nugget. And yeah, okay, we'll spend enough time on product, but that's that learning. And I think we all could stand to continuously remind ourselves of that for every single thing we do. And so that, includes content, of course, which is, you created all this time doing the content. Are you really thinking about the distribution and how to make that, into different interesting assets and how to even optimize it itself? I mean, I was, on the podcast side of the house, I was talking to a very, very notable tech company everyone would be familiar with, and they've done incredibly well over the years. They started a podcast and paid a bunch of money to strategize for it and have a separate host outside of the company and bring on all these guests. And said, well, what are you doing to actually promote it? Right? What's that look like for you? And they said, oh yeah, we put a little text post on LinkedIn, and when we release it, and then we run an ad against it. It's like, what? Really? That's it? Who's going to listen? It's so niche. Like, how are people understanding what they're even going to get when they get in there? Is there organic ways within, YouTube or podcast players that people are able to discover this? And that, to me, the fact that this is one of the most respected companies in the world, and, candidly, someone who is considered to be quite savage in terms of their investments and, the way they run the company, I thought, if that's all they're doing, I can't even imagine what those with less resources, fewer resources, who are less rigorous, are doing. And that's not sustainable for most companies. And that goes to any kind of content you're producing.
That's true. And that's an eye-opening example just of the assumptions involved, right? The whole field of dreams, if you build it, they will come kind of deal. But it also really kind of shows a spotlight on, it's like decent content, like not even exceptional content. We're just called decent content with excellent distribution. Like, it beats like wonderful content every time.
I'm not trying to rag on Netflix by any means. I've watched plenty of great shows. They've produced plenty of content. But that's a fantastic example of like people just logging in and then having a good algorithm and basically surfacing you something. And sometimes it might just be slop and you're eating it up. Whereas you have companies or, podcasters or creators on YouTube slaving away at this really good stuff and saying, why is this not getting reach? And yeah, that really matters. The distribution mechanisms.
It's true. Like suddenly you can, I love the Netflix example. YouTube works the same way, right? Like you've watched 10 episodes of something that like you would have never paid money for, like never in a million years. And you're sitting there. It's like you just ate a gallon of ice cream and you're like, what happened? How'd I get here?
Yeah. Well, at least the ice cream is like usually delicious. I'm like, that's usually true. Just like so average. Right? It's like, I don't even know what I just watched. Did I like take away? Did I even enjoy it? Like, I didn't learn anything, certainly. I even enjoy it. And you're like, wait, but this other stuff's too expensive. And so, yeah, it's just like, it's a matter of defaults. And so how do you, look at the world as it is, as opposed to how you'd want to see it and say, yeah, how are people probably going to find me? How are people probably going to discover me as a thought leader, discover us as this person? How are they going to start getting us the first time? And anyone who's been in these algorithms before knows what it's like to basically have something overtake your feed that you like watched once and you're like, I don't really want that actually. And it goes to show you how fragile this is, but also how powerful it can be once they do find you. And so how do you get yourself into that? Well, you need shots on goal. You just need shots on goal. And the problem with that and the channels that we have today is we're asked to do more with less, small teams. Oh yeah, can you produce these zillion pieces of content across all these different platforms is what marketers are being asked, individuals, content, and well, you need to invest a lot. Wait, I don't even have a lot of money. We're never going to get ROI on this thing. This is a brand investment. So how do you increase your odds? And what does X amount of viewers mean to you in your company? That's ultimately what it is. The best companies will be built off of, from folks who are able to understand that and invest ahead. But for everybody else who doesn't have full executive support to spend 3 years, how do you basically increase your odds in the short term and make this thing really valuable no matter what?
I think that's powerful. I love that illustration, that picture of you just need more shots on goal. It's all about getting it out there and in the most efficient manner possible, because you're right. Budgets are being cut. Positions are not being backfilled. Like it's tough. So the more you can do with what you already have.
Yeah. And I'll give you a funny example, something that I thought of a lot, which is whatever kind of content your company's producing, it's going to be a lot more powerful if people internally share it, right? That's just is what it is. And it also gives them something original to share themselves to be more credible in the market. So when I started a podcast, I thought, well, how would we give it to sellers to share, not just like reposting it, but put an interesting takeaway there? Most companies, what you've seen, anybody who's worked at a company before has seen someone post out to the Slack, hey, repost it with this text. And everyone just does the exact same text. Okay. And it's like, it's fine. Yeah, it's better than nothing, but it's not powerful. It's not original. It's not your sellers, but your people don't have time to like listen to whatever it is or watch the whole video, whatever it is. Hey, we did this great event here. Well, maybe you can actually just create some outputs in a platform that say, hey, give me a bunch of different variations of this. And that sounds kind of like XYZ. And you get that all in 1 minute. We can give it out to the company or, give it to them to analyze. And so basically that's another kind of use case that we've looked at. And I think, events are a really interesting use case for us. People spending millions of dollars on events and all this thought leadership there. It's not accruing to your company. So it's very vast. I think you're totally right.
I love that idea, right? You just give me 20 variations, right, on the key points of this that could be used in a post. And then you get variety. Then people are feeling like, okay, at least I get to pick something, or maybe I pick it, maybe I tweak it just a little bit to make it sound more like me, or at least it gets them involved in the process, as opposed to repost, reshare, it's like, give me something good.
Yeah. It's not going to drive reach at the end of the day.
No.
It's to do something like that.
So just as we wrap up, if people want to know more about you, more about Flowsend, where would you like them to go?
Yeah, go to Flowsend.ai, right? That's FLOWSEND.ai. Reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, Michael Katz, Michael N. Katz. I'll be posting a lot more about the learnings we have from customers and kind of perspectives on the space, maybe some hot takes. And so, you can sign up yourself today. Just, we want to give people a free trial. And, as I've talked about, getting people using it to understand what's really valuable for them beyond what we've already built into it. And so feel free to reach out directly, Michael@Flowsend.ai. But yeah, happy to connect and really excited.
Excellent. So if you're listening, make sure you go check out Flowsend. All the links are going to be in the show notes. I would encourage you, just like Michael's described in this conversation, it's beyond, it's not like simply for podcasting. Like, it is about taking content and repurposing it in so many ways. And not just content, but as he talked about, even, sales conversations, all this other stuff. Get out there, try those use cases, and save some time and get some new insights. So, Michael, this has been a blast. I could easily talk about this for a few more hours, but
no. Look, if you need right now, we want to give it to you. And so, if you want to import something else that isn't even yours, feel free. Just go test it out, see kind of the magic yourself. And really excited, and hopefully we'll talk in the future too.